Hi, I'm Melissa, and this is the Book Break. And today I'm really excited to have our guest, Deborah Goodrich Royce, and we're going to talk about her newer book, Reef Road. Thank you so much for being here with us, Deborah. I love your book.
I couldn't be happier. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your book?
Sure. So it's a twisty psychological thriller that occurs in Palm Beach, Florida in spring 2020 when the world is locked down. And it's in the voices of two women, a writer who's obsessed with the murder of her mother's best friend, and a younger woman who's married to a very glamorous Argentine husband who disappears with their two children about 3 weeks into that lockdown, and security camera footage nabs him getting on a plane for Buenos Aires, and she can't follow because of all the COVID restrictions. And the book toggles back and forth bit by bit between the two women, seemingly disconnected, and starts to reveal the very dark thread that connects them.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. And one of the things that I really loved about Reef Road is that we also get to see multiple perspectives. And we see the writer, and then we see the woman who we're following her story. And there's a bit of a murder mystery. That's awesome. And I've noticed that you write thrillers and everything that are really great. And this one, I understand you had a little bit of an extra tie to this story. Tell us more about that.
I did. So my own mother's best friend was murdered in 1948 in Pittsburgh when my mother and the murdered girl were only 12 years old. It happened on a Friday night in December when my mother was maybe going to be over at this girl's house for the evening. And for whatever reason, at the last minute, my grandmother said no, not for any particular reason. And when the parents came home from their evening out of bowling, they found their daughter on the floor having been stabbed 36 times. And it's remained an unsolved crime. And as you can probably imagine, it had a pretty profound effect on my mother and really changed, I think, the way she looked at the world. And then by extension, it had an effect on me. So I always knew this, but didn't focus so much on it. And when the pandemic shut the world down and I was suddenly home alone in front of my computer, I thought, I think I'm going to research that real crime. And lo and behold, there were reams of material on the internet about it, much more than I had anticipated.
So, Deborah, I know your hardcover of Reef Road has been out for a little bit, but you recently have a paperback version out. And I know you also do a lot of events.
That's right. The paperback is just about to come out. The book has just been named one of the best books of 2023 by Kirkus Reviews. I do a lot of events. I've had a very robust touring schedule. I will tour a little bit with the paperback, not quite as extensively as I did with the hardcover, because I need to sit down and finish my next book, which requires being home for a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And it's fun, like you said, to go out and to see your fans and to get to meet people that love your book. But as an author, it is tricky to balance your time out there with fans and events and writing. How do you balance your time with writing and doing the marketing?
That is the big challenge, and that was the dark gift of COVID, or the upside of COVID for writers, is we suddenly had this runway in front of us when we could just sit and write day after day after day. So for all the downsides of that, and there were obviously many that I don't need to detail, that was a kind of a secret perk for us writers. So I will be on the road for a couple of weeks. I will be home writing for a couple of weeks. I'll do a little bit more on the road, and then I'll have several months where I'm just really, hopefully, hunkered down over the next book.
It's been so fun to read your books and to hear more. What do you have in store next? Can you give us a little peek of what you're working on or what we might see next?
Yeah, so I got an email a year or so ago from a man who basically began by saying, "Hey, remember me?" Which I'm thinking, not really. And he listed, remember this dinner we had together, remember this or that. He referred to himself as having been my best boy on a film. And if you know about movies, a best boy is a real job. It gets credited at the end of a movie. So, I mean, it's kind of a provocative sentence, but there's a basis in fact. And he ended it by saying, "Do you remember when we ran into each other at the Cannes Film Festival and you were holding a baby? And I wondered for a moment if the child was mine, but I knew that couldn't be possible." And I had a profound sense of relief because I'm glad it wasn't possible because I didn't remember this man. But I got to thinking about memory and the idea that memory can be flawed and memory can differ. What did the Queen of England say recently? Recollections may vary. So my recollections varied, but I thought, what an interesting basis for a thriller, having a woman contacted by a man who has some data points of their shared life, but may or may not be telling the truth.
Yeah, that is a fascinating story. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Deborah, and thank you to our viewers. We'll
Thank
see you
you.
next time.